Too Fast Jeremy, written by Joseph Graham and clip art by Laura Strickland, a Gooting Elementary book. Jeremy sat in his desk feeling sad. Being a first grader was hard. The teacher, Mrs. Lee, was mean and there were too many rules. Every day was the same. Stand up, sit down, be quiet, go back to your seat. Don't talk so fast. Listen, don't shout. Mrs. Lee got mad if he forgot to raise his hand or if he went to line up too quickly. But the worst was running. Jeremy loved to run, but Mrs. Lee would yell at him if he did. Jeremy, wake up! Are you listening to me? Mrs. Lee stared at him. Her face looked mean and angry. Jeremy nodded his head. You say, yes, Mrs. Lee. Jeremy looked at his shoes and mumbled, yes, Mrs. Lee. Look at me. Jeremy looked up. Okay, one more time. Louder, please. Yes, Mrs. Lee, Jeremy croaked. All the kids laughed, and Jeremy felt like crying. The rest of the day, Jeremy tried his best to listen while Mrs. Lee taught math and Chinese, but all he could do was dream about flying super fast through the air. He was so happy to go home at the end of the day, he started to run to the front of the school. Stop! The school guard held up his hand. Come here. Jeremy walked slowly over to the school guard. I'm sorry, sir. The guard looked at him. Do you know why I told you to stop? Jeremy shook his head. I don't know. The guard said you are too fast. If you run like that at school, you will crash into somebody, and somebody might get hurt. Do you want that? No, sir. I will stop running. The guard patted him on the back. Just be careful, okay? Yes, sir. Once Jeremy got to the front of the school, he started running home. His mother yelled, Wait! She said, I don't want you to be hit by a car. The next day, Mrs. Lee was not at school. Instead, a short woman stood at the front of the classroom. Good morning, everyone. My name is Miss Wu, she said. Good morning, Miss Wu, the class said together. Today, Mrs. Lee is not feeling very well, so I will be your teacher for the day. Miss Wu was smiling as she told the students about herself. Miss Wu seemed nice. Whenever someone got a question right, she said, Good job, or Awesome work, keep it up. When Susan raised her hand and asked, May I go to the bathroom? Miss Wu said, Go ahead. Just come back quickly. Thank you, Miss Wu, Susan said as she rushed off to the bathroom. You're welcome, Susan, said Miss Wu. Jeremy was surprised. Mrs. Lee had always told the kids doing things quickly was dangerous. Later in the afternoon, during story time, Miss Wu told them a story about a man named Mr. Little, who could run faster than fire. That night, Jeremy had dreams of running so fast he burned holes in his shoes. The next day, Miss Wu was still there. Come in, everyone. Once everybody sat down, she told them they would have an outside day. Jeremy was confused. An outside day? What did that mean? Jeremy found out it meant they went outside to play. They jumped rope and went on the swings. They learned how to play soccer, basketball, and football. Miss Wu called all the kids together. We have one more thing we are going to do today. We are going to have a race. I want to see if you can run faster than Mr. Little." Miss Oo had all the kids line up. 3, 2, 1, go! Jeremy started running. He could hear Miss Oo yelling, "Go, go, go!" He pushed himself harder. The next thing he knew, everyone was cheering. He had won the race. Jeremy learned something that day. Sometimes you need to be slow and careful, but sometimes it's good to be fast. The end.